Hi, this is Dan Devlin for the Detective Dan Devlin Show, Honorable People, Honorable Nation. You've heard me say it before. I don't believe we can have an honorable nation if we don't have honorable people. We've been discussing the U.S. Constitution, and we covered subjects such as the Statement of Purpose, which is right at the outset of the U.S. Constitution. It is part of the Constitution. It outlines specifically what the goals and the objectives are of establishing the Constitution and the nation. Further, it identifies specifically and precisely who is to benefit from the establishment of the Constitution and the nation. And I'll say this for the benefit of those who may not have been watching our programs. The Constitution starts out with "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." What an amazing start to an amazing document. And we're going to go through the Constitution from the standpoint of the things that are most significant and of interest to the general population. As we go further away from that statement of purpose, we're told that we have a Congress, and we're told how it's to be made up, who can participate, what the qualifications are. And then later on, it goes into the presidency and the Supreme Court. And then it goes on to many other provisions. But most of the things that people are interested in come from what we call the Bill of Rights, or the amendments to the Constitution of the United States. Now, amendments are just as much a part of the Constitution once they're passed as the initial Constitution. But originally, it's important to know that those amendments were not there. In order to get the original Constitution that we're aware of passed, the individuals who were involved in really designing that Constitution had to agree that they would add a Bill of Rights. And most of us know those rights that are outlined within those 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments that are currently in the Constitution. Now, there are many more amendments that have taken place over time for a number of reasons. Some of them alter some of the things that are addressed in the body of the Constitution itself, such as how you elect certain officials and what their qualifications might be, and the process in actually electing them. Others identify areas that they didn't talk about initially, and one of those areas is slavery. And initially, the majority of the people were against including provisions to outlaw slavery in the original Constitution. As time went by, of course, we had the Civil War, and slaves were so-called freed, and a constitutional amendment was established to make sure that that reflected that individuals who are born, which would include the slaves that were born, and those who are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, would be called, as the amendment specifies, citizens of the United States. But there's another word which is pretty interesting, and most people are aware of it, and that'll be the focus of this particular program. It's the word American. Now we know, or generally would accept, what the words human being would mean. And the Constitution, at least in certain areas, specifies who a citizen would be. It also names categories of people, senators, for example, or congressmen, or members of the House of Representatives. These are all words that mean particular groups of people. The word citizen, if you look at the Constitution, specifically the 14th Amendment, you would see that it's identifying a citizen as one who is born and is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And so there are a couple provisions there as to how someone gets to be one of we the people, one of the people of the United States. However, there's a word called an American. And most of us, if I hadn't gone into this lengthy explanation, if we said, well, who's an American? Most people would probably say, well, people who are one of we the people of the United States. But the mere use of the word person, most of us, I would guess, are aware that was the crucial word in the Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade. And because they couldn't prove that the word person applied to unborn human beings, which I believe they also couldn't establish that it did not apply to them, and I make the case that it did apply to them. But as I mentioned in my book, The Right of Rights, and in other writings, there's another word, in fact, a couple words, that describe who is to benefit from the Constitution of the United States. And I know I'm going over ground that we've covered before, but there may be new viewers, and so we need to lay this down for what we'll address later on in this program. And so, of course, those words are our posterity. The Constitution was established, and I claim for the purpose. That means the one purpose above all the others, and that is to secure the blessings of liberty, of which we've already talked about it, establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, etc. Those are all blessings of liberty. Because if you don't have freedom, liberty, whatever word you want to call it, if we don't have that ability to determine our own life and what we do in it and how we govern ourselves and others, if we don't have the freedom to do that, if we don't have those blessings of liberty, then we couldn't establish justice or ensure domestic tranquility or provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. And so, while the Constitution is very important and crucial if you want to understand what the United States and the people thereof are supposed to be doing, we can boil it down even further, and those of you who have been listening, you know that I'm about fundamentals. If you don't get the fundamentals right, it's very difficult or impossible to achieve what you're trying to achieve if you are trying to achieve good goals, honorable goals, so we can be an honorable people and an honorable nation. So those words, our posterity, refer to, as I've indicated before, are yet to be born descendants, which includes those in the womb. And currently we're destroying them. Now, I've covered this extensively before and in a relatively recent program. We're calling upon those who we have placed in office, who we have trusted, to do the things that we have determined that office should do. The people that we, in essence, hire we have them swear an oath, and that oath is a contract with us. And if they violate that contract, they no longer have that office or the authority of that office. Now, we need to make sure that we can enforce that. We have the right, we have the duty to do that. But today's program is a little different in that normally you know that I'm pretty clinical in the way I go about things. I don't want to pull on your heartstrings. I want to deal with facts. And I want to deal with what we call the law or laws of the Constitution of the United States and of the states to which we're a part of. And so that requires a relatively analytical approach. It's important to do that because passion is important in many things. And really that drives how we set up our society. But when it comes down to actually making the rules, we need to be pretty objective. And we need to look at all the evidence and say, how do we want to live? And the mere fact that someone is emotional about something, and I'll be jumped on for this, but if we look at the genders, we find that women more often than men will take that approach of being emotional about even laws that they want to put in place. We have members of the House of Representatives now, and we have people in the Senate who are trying to use our emotions in order to achieve what they want. They want to, at least their claim is, that they want to solve climate problems by vastly changing our society. And while I don't believe that they have honorably established that there's really a need to do that, and most of us would agree, and I certainly am for a clean environment. But knowing what it takes and what should be done in order to get that to happen and following through with that is another thing altogether. But when you say that this is so important that we're going to change drastically the way our businesses are run, the way we live as individuals, to rebuild all the structures in the United States to conform to the wishes of a few people in Congress, and perhaps those who have made the case that we need this climate change, and dismiss the vast majority of people of, and admittedly, I would say, on almost any issue, the vast majority, while they might have an opinion, they don't care enough to do anything about it. But when we establish laws, we should know what the information is. We should know what the facts are. And we should go by those facts in order to determine whether we're going to take away the opportunity for people to participate in certain job opportunities, whether they're going to create a business based upon whether it's wind power, whether it's solar power, whether it's using fossil fuels. It's very easy for us, and we've done programs on this before, we talked about respect, for us to believe that we're correct, we don't care what anybody else says, we're going to have it our way, and we're going to push this, and if you try to confront us, we will demonize you, we will lie about you, we will give false information just to get what we want. That's where we are in American society. But today, I'm going to deal with those emotions. Unlike the way I would normally handle things. Because some things, it's kind of like looking at a war. And when you're there and you see what happens and you see what happens to human beings in war, some people would call them atrocities. The reality is oftentimes it's just mostly men trying to stay alive. Most of them don't have a political agenda. They're placed in this position, maybe even volunteered to be there, because they believe that they're trying to achieve certain goals. And I can tell you that it's shattering to one's inner self when you have to question, did I do all that not understanding the real reasons why we were there in the first place? And so our program is going to deal with, of course, the issue that deals with our posterity. And they call it abortion, the destruction of an innocent, unborn human being, an American human being. One who is the product of people who are one of the people of the United States. That's who your posterity is, remember that. Well, I saw the movie Unplanned yesterday. Very difficult to watch. I've been at this battle for many years now, and those who are supposed to be coming to the aid of innocent people, supposed to be upholding the ethic of American society of defending the innocent, the helpless, and to have them turn and go in the other direction because they fear the truth is emotionally very difficult for me. I've risked my life on countless occasions, often for people who I did not even know. And have I received injuries for that? Fortunately for me, they weren't all that serious. And would I do it again? Of course I would. But when you realize that the general public, and oftentimes they claim that they care so much, especially about this issue called abortion, and they say it's a terrible thing, and yet they are willing to do nothing, they are willing to risk nothing in order to halt it. And knowing that those same people, if they were the victim, if they were about to be tortured, go through excruciating pain, and ultimately be killed, you know that every single one of them would want people like me to come to their aid and make sure that they were not abused and killed in that way. And yet those individuals will do nothing but pray or hope or complain. And why is that? I've done programs on being a coward. And many of us are cowardly at various times in our life. But it takes facing ourselves. You see, really that's the only person we have control over. And we could claim that we don't have control over ourselves, but the reality is that if we want something bad enough, we have an amazing amount of control over ourselves and those around us. And certainly we're supposed to have control, and legally we do have control over the people who we place in office. And yet still, I can't tell you that we have ended this slaughter of innocent human beings in the womb. Now, the program Unplanned is about a young woman who decides to work, initially volunteering, at an abortion clinic. And it goes through years of her life. It's heart-wrenching. Many people couldn't even get through the movie, I would suspect. But it's graphic. And I've seen these things before. I've seen people dismembered, and I won't go into, the particulars. So these things are not shocking to me. But when you understand that it is unnecessary because we have laws that are supposed to protect those individuals, and eventually this will happen. At least I do not believe that we're so evil that we will continue to ignore this. The sides and the back of my truck identify this truth. And it advises people that the U.S. Constitution names our posterity, who are our unborn descendants in the womb, to be treated as ourselves. And so we should halt this destruction, because we can't be honorable people in an honorable nation if we do not. But the interesting thing about this film was the lack of responsibility. Now, it has a great outcome because eventually this woman decides that it's the wrong direction to go. If you watch it carefully, it appears as though the reason she went in that direction is because people from this, I hesitate to use the name, but I will use the name here, Planned Parenthood. It's a multi-million-dollar organization that has tremendous power. And she's working for these people, and it's only when they lean on her a little bit. She gets an award as one of the most valuable people in Planned Parenthood. But then she begins to question, are they really doing what she believed they were going to do, which is to make abortions rare because you're helping people in other ways. Again, I won't go into that area right now. But once that happens, she rethinks things even more and ultimately decides she is going to not work with them anymore. But what I found interesting was that she's doing some soul searching. And she had some issues early on in her life that she was going to have to deal with for the rest of her life. But she marries once and then gets divorced, and then she marries again. And I often deal with the responsibility of men. And that really isn't covered very much in this film. But we have a man that she marries, knowing that she works for Planned Parenthood, knowing that she's responsible for the destruction of unborn human beings, and this person, soon to be her husband, knows this. This woman's mother even questions, you're going to marry her knowing that she's going to continue to work at that clinic? And he says, well, I love her. Love is a crazy, crazy thing. Now, what if he would have been the man that he should have been? And he's portrayed as a pretty good guy in this film, and he probably is a pretty good guy. They go on to have a child, and then it's years later before Abby, the young woman, decides to leave the clinic and become involved with the so-called pro-life movement. But what if that husband or future husband would have done what he should have done? And I'm a spiritual, religious person who believes in Scripture. And all of you probably know the story of Adam and Eve, and we understand that Eve decided to take a bite of the fruit. Some people say it was an apple. I don't know. And what does Adam do? He says, what the heck, I might as well do it too. And he goes along with it. And all mankind isn't punished because of Eve. They're punished because Adam listened to the woman, his wife. In this program, this man, in my opinion, should have been courageous, and you know we talk about courage. And he should have said, of course I love this woman, but I cannot allow her to believe that I will condone this behavior, which is what he did. And at one point, late in the film, she talks about 22,000 abortions that were done at that clinic while she was there. And if that figure's wrong, it's probably close, so don't hold me to it. But if that man would have said, I'm sorry, dear, I love you, but I cannot marry someone and try to have a happy life with someone who is destroying those innocent young human beings in the womb, those Americans in the womb. Would that have caused her to rethink things? Would it have caused her to say, I have a choice here. I'm going to follow my husband or my future husband. I'm going to do what he wants. And if he says I can no longer work there, I will go along with that. Or is she going to say, you're not worth it, I'm going to continue to do this job? If you look at the film, you'll see she always really questioned whether she was doing the right thing anyway. But as she got awards and she was patted on the back, that was, I believe, a stimulus for her to go ahead and continue. But many people won't see what I saw in that film. And I would like to go on and talk about it much more. But the role of men in our society when it comes to the issue of abortion has pretty much been ignored. Oftentimes, men are not only aware of what's going on, they're oftentimes promoting and pushing a woman to annihilate that child that is his, that woman's, most of us believe created by God, and is the descendant, the posterity of the mother and the father on both sides, and the grandparents on both sides. You see, our society is based upon the idea that we have this network of human beings who are all supposed to care about our future and are supposed to have us be raised in a condition where we have the possibility of succeeding at controlling our life. God bless you all. Let's live honorable lives and be honorable people so we can have an honorable nation. Have a great day.